My wife zipped a suitcase, stood in the middle of our kitchen and said, "I'm moving in with James." I didn't shout. I didn't ask who James was. I already knew. I just set my coffee mug down and said, "Okay, but don't leave yet." His wife is probably still at his apartment, and the divorce papers were filed this morning. For a second, Claire just stared at me. Then all the color drained out of her face. What? I remember how quiet the house felt in that moment. The fridge humming. The rain tapping against the window over the sink. Her hands still wrapped around the suitcase handle like she could pull the whole scene backward if she squeezed hard enough. "You heard me," I said. "Laura knows. James is having a very bad day. And before you ask, the cards in my name were shut off an hour ago." That was the first time in months she looked at me like I was a stranger. The crazy part is, if you had seen us a year earlier, you would have said we were solid. Not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But solid. My name's Daniel. I'm 39. I own a renovation company I started in my 20s with 1 truck, 2 beat-up ladders, and more pride than money. By the time I met Claire, I was finally doing well. Not rich, not flashy, but steady. I could finish what I started. I paid my bills. Kept my word. Claire used to love that about me. We met at a friend's barbecue. She was funny, sharp, beautiful without trying too hard, and she had this way of making a room feel warmer when she walked into it. We got married 2 years later. We built a life slowly, the way normal people do. I worked long days. She did marketing for a real estate firm. We bought furniture one piece at a time. Took one decent vacation a year. Hosted holidays. Fought about paint colors and where the couch should go. The house we lived in had belonged to my aunt before she passed. She left it to me long before I ever met Claire. It wasn't fancy when I got it. I spent 2 years restoring it. New floors, new wiring, rebuilt kitchen. The back deck Claire always said felt like a movie set in summer. That house became the center of our marriage. Maybe that's why it mattered so much when I realized she was already planning her next life from inside it. Looking back, the change started small. Claire began staying late at work more often. Then came the new perfume. The gym membership she suddenly cared about. The phone that never left her hand. If she went to take out the trash, she took her phone. If she went to the shower, the phone went on the counter where she could see it through the glass. Then came the contempt. That was the part that got to me more than the distance. She stopped talking to me like I was her husband and started talking to me like I was some old employee she couldn't fire yet. "You still wear those boots everywhere? You know, not everything has to be about work." James says people who are really successful learn how to delegate. That was the first time I heard his name. James this. James that. James had a condo downtown. James had season tickets. James invested early in some development deal and made a killing. James thought Europe in the fall was overrated unless you did it properly. I asked once, casually, "This James guy sounds important." She laughed. "He's just confident. You should try it sometime." That one stayed with me. I wanted to believe it was just a phase. Just ego. Some midlife identity crisis with better shoes. But suspicion doesn't usually arrive like thunder. It leaks in through the cracks. A story that changes slightly. A smile at the wrong text. A meeting that runs late when the office lights are already off. The truth found me on a Tuesday night. Claire had left for what she said was a client dinner. I was on the couch with my laptop when I noticed her old iPad in the drawer of the side table. She hadn't used it in months. I only opened it because I wanted to check if it still worked before donating it. The messages were synced. I wish I could tell you I handled that part like a machine. I didn't. My hands went cold so fast I nearly dropped it. There it all was. James. Tonight was worth the wait. Claire. He has no idea. James. He'll survive. Once you move out, he'll fold. Guys like him always do. Claire. I just want to time it right. His quarterly payout hits next week. Then another one. Claire. I'm not leaving with nothing after 11 years. The house is the minimum. And another. James. Once this is done, you won't have to play wife anymore. I don't know how long I sat there reading. Long enough for the room to feel unreal. Long enough for the rain outside to stop. Long enough to understand that this wasn't an emotional mistake or a flirtation that got out of hand. This was a plan. They weren't just sleeping together. They were budgeting my collapse. I took screenshots of everything. Sent them to a new email. Then I checked our shared credit card statements. There were hotel charges. Restaurant bills on nights she said she was with coworkers. One weekend spa charge from a date she told me she'd gone to see her sister. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was how confident they were. James wrote like he had already won. Claire wrote like I was a problem to manage. That night when she came home, I didn't confront her. She kissed my cheek, asked if I'd eaten, and went upstairs to shower. I sat at the kitchen table and realized something inside me had gone very still. Not dead. Not numb. The next morning I called a lawyer. Her name was Elena, and she was the kind of person who could turn panic into bullet points in under 5 minutes. I told her everything. The messages. The spending. The house. My business. The timing. She listened, then said, "Good news first. The house was inherited before marriage and held in your name alone. That matters. Your company predates the marriage and your records are clean. That matters too. Bad news. She may still try to force a settlement through pressure, narrative, or emotional leverage. So we move first." And that's exactly what I did. I separated my incoming income, closed the cards attached to my accounts, copied every financial record, changed passwords, pulled security footage from our front camera and found James picking her up twice when I'd supposedly been away on overnight jobs. Then Elena did something I hadn't even thought to do. She found out James wasn't separated. He was very much married. His wife, Laura, had no clue. I stared at the printout Elena slid toward me and actually laughed once. Not because it was funny, because it was so ugly it crossed into absurd. Claire thought she was leaving me for some powerful man with a glamorous new life. In reality, she was the side relationship of a man who lied to everyone in reach. I wrestled with whether to tell Laura. For about an hour. Then I imagined being in her place. So I sent her everything. Not a speech. Not a threat. Just the screenshots, dates, hotel charges, and camera stills. She called me that evening. Her voice was calm in the same way mine had become calm. The kind of calm that only shows up after something breaks clean through the middle. She said, "Thank you for telling me. I'm sorry we're meeting this way." I said, "Me too." That was all. Over the next 48 hours, my wife kept moving around me like I was furniture. She was lighter, almost cheerful, humming while getting dressed, answering texts with a smile she never shared with me anymore. She thought she was close to freedom. What she didn't know was that the paperwork was already in motion. Then came Friday morning. She walked into the kitchen wearing a white blouse I'd bought her in Chicago, set her suitcase by the island, and delivered the line she'd probably rehearsed in her head all week. "I'm moving in with James." There was no guilt in her voice. No hesitation. Just performance. Like she expected me to beg, or rage, or bargain, and either way confirm the story she'd been telling herself about me. Instead, I gave her the truth in the calmest voice I had. "But don't leave yet. His wife is probably still at his apartment, and the divorce papers were filed this morning." At first she tried to laugh. "You're bluffing." "No. Daniel, don't do this." "I'm not doing anything, Claire. I'm responding." Then I slid the envelope across the counter. Petition. Financial notice. Temporary restrictions. All neat. All real. She opened it with shaking hands. "You filed already?" "Yes." Her eyes snapped up. "Because of a few texts?" I actually remember that line word for word because of how insane it sounded. "A few texts?" I said. "You mean the affair, the hotel charges, the lies, and the part where you and James discussed waiting for my payout before taking the house?" She froze. That told me everything. She hadn't even realized I knew that much. Then her phone rang. She answered so fast she almost dropped it. "James?" I could hear his voice, thin and panicked, through the speaker. "Don't come here," he said. "Laura knows." She took screenshots. She called my partner. "Just, don't come." Claire looked at me as if the room had tilted. "James, what are you talking about?" He lowered his voice, but not enough. I have to handle this. I'll call you later. The line went dead. That was the exact second she understood. Not that she'd been caught. That she had miscalculated everything. She looked around our kitchen as if seeing it for the first time. The marble counters she picked out. The copper pans above the stove. The sunlight hitting the hardwood floor I laid myself. The life she thought she could step out of and still somehow own pieces of. What did you do? She whispered. I shook my head. No. That's the wrong question. The right question is, what did you think was going to happen? For the first time in 11 years, she had no answer. She left that afternoon, not to James, but to a hotel near the interstate. And if that had been the end, it still would have been enough. But betrayal has fallout. It doesn't disappear because the first bomb already went off. Claire spent the next week trying to regain control. First came anger. Then tears. Then blame. She accused me of invading her privacy. Said I was cold, vindictive, paranoid. Said James had made her feel seen. Said I had pushed her away with work. Said adults were allowed to fall out of love. I told her maybe all of that could have been discussed before the affair. Before the planning. Before the greed. Then came the real confrontation. She asked to meet at the house with her parents so we could handle things like adults. Translation: she wanted witnesses. She wanted pressure. She still believed if enough people sat around my dining table looking disappointed, I'd surrender something out of shame. So I said yes. Her parents came Sunday afternoon. Claire came 30 minutes late. James did not come, which told me he was already in survival mode. Her mother started with that careful voice people use when they want peace more than truth. Daniel, we all know this is painful, but Claire gave a lot to this marriage too. I slid a folder onto the table. Inside was the timeline. The charges. The messages. The camera stills. The legal breakdown of what was and wasn't marital property. Every account documented. Every lie anchored to a date. No speech. No drama. Just facts. Claire's father read in silence for almost a full minute. Then he took off his glasses and looked at his daughter like he didn't recognize her. Her mother started crying. Claire didn't. She just sat there, rigid, arms folded, as if refusing to react could undo what was in front of her. Then her phone buzzed again. She checked it. I watched her face change. James had been placed on administrative leave. Laura had filed. The condo Claire thought she was moving into wasn't even his. It was tied up through his marriage and his company arrangement. He wasn't some fearless man starting a new future with her. He was a coward trying not to drown. That was the moment the arrogance left her completely. Not when I exposed the affair. Not when the papers were filed. When she realized James wasn't waiting at the end of the bridge. There was no soft landing. No glamorous next chapter. No upgraded life. Just a hotel room, a collapsing fantasy, and the ruins of the home she threw away. After that, the messages slowed down. Then stopped. The divorce wasn't fun. Nobody sane enjoys that process. But it was clean. Elena made sure of that. Claire got what the law said she got. Nothing more. The house stayed mine. The business stayed mine. The savings were divided fairly. The illusion that she could take my life with her died in a conference room under fluorescent lights. A few months later, she asked if we could talk. We met at a coffee shop halfway across town. She looked tired. Not tragic. Not destroyed. Just tired in the way people look when reality has finally collected its debt. She said, I made a mistake. I let the silence sit there. Then she said, I didn't think you'd move on so fast. That almost made me smile. Because I hadn't moved on fast. I had just moved on the moment I understood I had to. There's a difference. I told her, you didn't lose me when you packed a suitcase, Claire. You lost me when you started making plans that depended on me staying blind. She cried then. Quietly. For real, I think. But some doors don't reopen because the person on the other side finally knocks politely. I left my coffee half full and walked out into the sun feeling lighter than I had in years. These days, the house is quiet again, but it's a good quiet. I kept the deck. Replanted the garden. Painted the guest room into an office. I sleep through the night. I laugh more. I eat dinner without checking whether someone is lying to my face. People think revenge is yelling, breaking things, making a scene. It's not. Sometimes revenge is paperwork. Sometimes it's self-control. Sometimes it's looking at the person who thought they had you cornered and saying one calm sentence that lets them know the game ended before they even announced they were playing. The day my wife said, "I'm moving in with James," she thought she was delivering the final blow. She wasn't. She was arriving late to her own ending. And I think that's what rattled her most. Not that I caught her. Not that I filed. Not even that James fell apart. It was that I didn't chase her. I didn't beg. I didn't collapse. I just stood in the kitchen we built, looked at the woman I loved for 11 years, and answered her with the truth. By then, she had already lost everything that mattered. And somehow, by staying calm, I got everything back. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.